Hello everybody, it's Fiona Hooper here again, and I've got my glasses on today because I've got some notes and I don't want to forget to any points I want to tell you, so I have to bear with them, I'm afraid. Probably get the reflection from the window on them a bit, but never mind. So, commissioning a portrait can be quite a scary sort of idea for some people if you've never done it before, but it's really quite straightforward. And I've got a few tips here for you to think about if you do want to commission a portrait, whether that's a person or an animal, child, whatever. The first thing is obviously to choose your artist. Now, different artists have different styles, they work in different mediums, so maybe oil, watercolour, pencil, etc., pastels. And so I'd advise you just to take some time to check out the different artists. You'll find quite a lot online. Decent portrait artists should have a website so that you can go and check out their work and see if it appeals to you or the person for whom the portrait is intended. And that's obviously very important because you want a portrait that you're going to enjoy and appreciate. The second thing is to consider the medium. Now, different artists again work in different mediums, as I said just now. Some specialise in one medium, or maybe a couple of different mediums. My main medium, for example, is oils, but I also do some coloured pencil work and very occasionally some graphite pencil, but that's not very often. So just have a look around, look at the different portraits that you see online and take note of what medium they've been completed in. And now as we come on to price, portraits can actually be surprisingly affordable. Some people think that they're thousands of pounds, and they can be, but you can certainly get a portrait to hopefully suit your budget. So one of the best things to do to start with is, if you don't see prices on an artist's website, just make sure you've got a budget in mind and tell the artist what that budget is, and then you can both work towards hopefully getting an agreeable and acceptable arrangement for what portrait you'd like, depending on price, size, medium and everything else. The price will be affected by how many subjects there are in the portrait. So if it's one dog, two dogs, a family with 3 children, whatever, if there's a particular background, a complex background, or whether it's just a fairly neutral shaded background to enhance the subject and show them off. Also the medium oils tend to be more expensive than watercolours, for example. So again, there are lots of factors to take into account, but the artist should be able to help you through that and guide you to a suitable solution for your portrait. Deposit. Normally most artists will request a deposit when you book the commission with them. This will normally be a percentage of the total price and is normally paid up front. If it's a smaller portrait that's not as expensive, some artists actually ask for 100% up front as well, but it's more normal to pay a deposit of a percentage up front. Now the method for completing the portrait. So going back to the old masters and before photography was around, to do a portrait would normally involve quite a number of sittings by the subject for the artist. So it's quite a lot of time commitment from both sides there to actually work from the live subject. Now that's normally fine if it's a person and you don't live too far away from each other and you've got the time, which these days time is the one thing that's normally in such short supply. So I personally am happy to work from photographs, although I like to have a good selection of photographs so that I can see different aspects of the subject as well. And for children and animals, it's really much more helpful to work from photographs because neither like to sit still for very long. So that's much easier in that respect. But I'll tell you more about photographs in a little while, and I also did do a couple of videos that you can look back on my Facebook page and find about photographing an animal, particularly a dog, for a portrait, and also the types of photographs that are very helpful. Consider the pose for the portrait as well. So that's sort of not just whether it's a head and shoulders or a full body, but does the person or subject have a sort of recognisable pose? Maybe they often sit with their arms folded, or they like to relax in a chair, or if it's a dog, there may be a typical pose that you adore where they just have the head on one side and look questioningly at you, or sit in a particular way. All these sort of things actually mean that the portrait is going to be far more representative of the subject concerned. And for a dog, for example, as well, whether they generally sit with their mouth open and their tongue out, or whether they, don't normally do that. For a person in particular, appearance, what sort of clothes do they normally wear? Do they like bright colours, more muted colours? Do they like wearing hats? What's their normal sort of preferred hairstyle? If they like their hair down, for example, more, they're probably not going to appreciate a portrait with the hair tied back. So, if this is for somebody else or a surprise for them. So consider, how they would normally look, what actually sort of says to you that is that person, and sums them up in terms of appearance. Meaningful objects can be included in a portrait. So for a person, that could be golf clubs, cricket paraphernalia, a football. It could be for a child or a dog, it could be a favourite toy. Again, something that is significant to that person, and it may be from their career. It could be a judge's robes, for example, or a uniform, or a musical instrument. So, these things can just help to make the portrait even more personal. We'll just return to the subject of background. Would you want a particular location, indoors or outdoors, or say a shaded type background, sort of more to one colour, but not just a flat background, that would maybe act as a foil for the subject. And also consider what colours would work well, or that the subject themselves would like. When we come on to framing, at the outset, be clear as to whether the price includes or doesn't include a frame. That can obviously increase the price by a fair bit, or you could be disappointed if you thought you were getting a frame. So just make sure of that up front. The frame on a painting should enhance the painting, not overpower it or distract from it. And the artist should be able to advise you on the sort of frame which will be really good for that portrait and will make it look better and really bring out the portrait itself. Now, obviously, some people have different preferences, or you may want it to go with some other paintings that you've got with particular frames, or you may want it to just make sure it goes with your decor. So have a think about that, but the artist should be able to tell you how to frame it, which will vary whether it's watercolours, pastels, oils, and it's quite good to take their advice on the subject of framing. Do let them know if you want them to organise the frame for you. Photographs. I have, as I said before, I have done some videos about photographs for portraits. I do like to take the photographs myself if the distance isn't too far. Obviously, if it's a different country, well, with COVID at the moment we can't travel anyway, but very happy if you'd like to pay my fare to another lovely country to come and take photographs. But being realistic, if you're not very close to the artist, make sure you've got some good clear photographs with the subject in focus and filling as much of the frame as possible, because obviously the artist needs the detail to make the portrait of that subject really capture the subject, not just a dog as opposed to your dog. Some artists may charge for taking the photographs, but personally, if the subject is quite close, I like to actually meet them to get more of an idea of their character, and I think it's part of the service if it's not too far to travel. Photographs should be taken in a good light, preferably sort of overcast light rather than sunlight if you're outdoors. And if you're indoors, just be aware of the type of artificial light that may be in use, because that can change the colour cast on a photograph considerably. You know, it could end up with someone's hair looking rather different colour from how it actually looks in real life. The photographs as well should either be taken by the artist or by yourself or somebody you know who's given permission for the photographs to be used as the subject for the painting, source material for the painting, because otherwise we run the risk of breaking copyright laws and a potential lawsuit, which nobody wants. Lastly, the subject of time. Do allow sufficient time for the artist to complete the portrait, especially if you want it for somebody's birthday or for Christmas. Artists work at different speeds. They should be able to give you an idea of how long the portrait will take to be done. Something like oils will normally take longer than watercolour or pastels, for example. And with oils you also have the drying time, because the oils need to, the oil in the paint needs to oxidise to dry before it can have a coat of varnish to protect it. So, you know, just bear that in mind. The artist will want to have the time to do a good job for you rather than a rush job. So those are my main tips for the moment on commissioning a portrait. I hope that's been helpful. If you do have any other questions at all, I'd be happy to try and help. Just send me a message or visit my website at www.fionahooper.com. I have some information on there about commissioning portraits, and otherwise just drop me a line. And thanks very much for listening, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.